Okay, so there comes a time in most people's life where they recognise that life is pay to play, right? So you basically have to go out there and get a job just to survive. You know, you need to buy food, you need to buy clothes, you need to pay rent most of the time. Most people recognise this at some point in their life, and they go out there and get some kind of job. And these jobs can vary in, what it is, what skill set it requires, stuff like that. But for most people, especially in the early days, the kind of job they're going to be doing is going to be not much fun. It's going to be quite boring, maybe possibly quite repetitive, quite arduous, and this is just kind of, we come to accept this, right? This is just how it works. You are trading your time for money. There's a job that needs doing, and it's not very much fun, so they need someone to do it, so they're going to pay you to do it. That's just how it is. And there's no, in a sense, I think, credit where credit's due. I think if you're out there and you've got a job and you're making ends meet, give yourself a lot of credit, because it is a great thing. And there is, if you're able to get yourself organised enough to hold down a job, then, fair play. That's great. The trouble is that for most people, there's some kind of creative vision of some sort that they want to do as well. And this could be all sorts of things. It could be wanting to run an online business. It could be wanting to start a YouTube channel. It could be wanting to make music. If you talk to most people, eventually, you tend to find they've got some kind of thing that they want to do. And they might not take any action on it. It just might be an idea in their heads, but most people have some kind of creative vision that they want to do. And this is where the side hustle comes in. It's basically what I view the side hustle it's basically taking whatever that creative vision is for you and trying to make it a reality on the side while you're working full time. So I'm in this situation at the moment where I've decided that what I really want to focus my time on is making YouTube videos. I really love doing it. I think there's a lot of potential in it, and I spend a lot of my time doing it. I've got this YouTube channel, I've got another one where I make travel vlogs, and I invest time and money into it, and it's quite a serious commitment. But obviously I have a job as well, and that has to come first, and I have to fit the job around this creative pursuit. And you get all sorts of examples of this. The classic example is, an actor who wants to become successful gets a job as a day job, right? In a bar, in a cafe, in a restaurant. Same with musicians. Lots of musicians will work in a pub or in a record studio or something that doesn't really, it's not necessarily what they want to do full time, but it just gives them money so they can pursue their passion long term. And generally speaking, when people have some kind of creative vision that they want to take action on, whether that's music, whether it's acting, whether it's YouTube, whatever it is, they will tend to have a certain type of job. And there are kind of two options that you have in this scenario where you have a side hustle. There are two kinds of jobs you can get. One is the typical 9 to 5, which is where you're working in an office in front of a computer. And that could be all kinds of things. It could be you're writing emails to people, you're a secretary. It could be you're doing spreadsheets. You could be you could be a journalist. You could be working for HR, sales, all sorts of things. It's some kind of job where you're behind a computer for most of the day, right? That's the job. That's the first job that you can get, the kind of typical 9 to 5. And the second one is you work in some kind of, generally a hospitality-based job that is a bit more flexible and is a bit less serious than a 9 to 5. So this is, like I say, this could be working in a cafe, working in a restaurant, working in a pub, something like that. And if you're generally people who are pursuing some kind of creative endeavour, they will tend to go for that latter option. They will tend to go for working in a pub or in a cafe or something like that. And there are some advantages to doing this, but it's not the option I've taken, as you guys know. And I'm going to explain why I've made this decision, because there is actually a fair degree of intentionality behind that. And I'm going to explain to you why I actually think it's better for most people, if they have some kind of side hustle, to fit that side hustle around a normal job, like a normal 9 to 5. And instead of just having a short-term hospitality job that is instead, right? So, but first of all, like, why do people choose to get a sort of coffee shop job or a pub job instead of a normal job if they're pursuing some kind of side hustle? It tends to be because they're working in a pub or in a cafe is perceived as being easier. It's kind of, there's no training required, so you don't actually need a lot of training to get started. You need to know where the coffee cups go and stuff like that, but apart from that, that's pretty much it. It's quite casual work, it's quite easy, it's quite mindless, it's quite simple, and you have a little bit more flexibility with shifts. So, if you need to pursue your side hustle at a certain time, you can fit it around that. And then the other thing is, which I think is not insignificant, is that it's quite easy to dispose of the job if you have a big breakthrough and you need to focus on the side hustle 100%. There's not a very big notice period for these jobs, so it's quite easy to get out of. Those are kind of the perceived advantages. But I think there are a lot of disadvantages to doing this. From my experience, having worked like both jobs, both the 9 to 5 and the sort of hospitality job, there are actually a lot of disadvantages that outweigh the pros, in my view. So the first con, I think, about working in a cafe or a pub is that it's actually a lot harder than you think it's going to be. It's easy to underestimate how much mental exhaustion you get from working on your feet in a boring job like a pub. And on the inverse, it's actually quite easy to overestimate how difficult it is to work in a normal 9 to 5. I remember when I first moved to Oxford and I first got this job, I had a housemate who worked in a cafe, like a really nice girl, we got on really well. And she's moved out now, she's actually gone travelling. But she was working in a cafe while she was here. And she said she found it so exhausting. I'd get back from work from my 9 to 5 job, which was pretty easy. I was just sitting there looking at spreadsheets, finish at 5 o'clock, cycle back home, and I'd see her, and she'd just be absolutely knackered, because she was on her feet all day, doing very menial tasks and being extremely bored. There's something about the cafe job where you have a combination of both you're knackered because it's a menial, you're on your feet all day and you're working, it's quite labour intensive, but it's also extremely boring and repetitive, and that combination just wipes you out basically, or in any case wipes you out a lot more than a 9 to 5. And it's funny because at the time I was I'd moved to Oxford and I was thinking, actually, is it good that I've got this 9 to 5 job? Am I giving myself enough time to focus on my side hustles? But I'd get back at 5 o'clock from my job and I'd just make some food and then tootle upstairs into my room and just I'd have loads of energy. I'd have plenty of energy just left for a couple of hours just to work on the YouTube stuff. And yeah, it worked really well. And I recognised that if I was working in a cafe, that wouldn't happen. It would be so much harder. So that's the first thing that I'd say is it's very easy to overestimate how hard work a cafe is. And if you really are just focused on earning money so that you can spend time, your real time and your real mental energy on some kind of side hustle, then I think just get a 9 to 5 because it's less taxing on your mental energy. The second thing, and this is a bit of a boring one, but you do need to think about it a little bit, not much, but a little bit, is if you work 9 to 5, then you do have some kind of backup plan. Now, I've got a job at the moment, and it's not my ideal job by any means, but it is a lot better than working in a cafe. The trouble with working in a cafe is there's no like progression, and if your side hustle doesn't work out, or if you change paths, you decide you don't want to pursue that particular side hustle anymore, or if you have to give up for any kind of reason, whether that's right for you to give up or not, you don't have anything to fall back on, really. You've just got this job working in a cafe, which you can't really, there's no progression upwards. Maybe you can become a manager and earn an extra couple of pounds per hour, but realistically, you're not really gonna progress. Meanwhile, if you're working at 9 to 5, granted, like the job I have at the moment, it's not super exciting, it's not super fun or whatever, but there's opportunity for progression. And if for whatever reason I decide that I don't want to pursue YouTube anymore, or it just doesn't work out, it's too hard or whatever, which I don't think is very likely, but let's say that is what happens or whatever, life gets in the way, then worst comes to worst, I've got a very good thing to fall back on, because I'll have spent all that time working on like a decent job that people can look at my CV and be like, oh wow, this guy's actually he's actually done something with his life that's quite challenging. Like a 9 to 5 is more impressive than working in a cafe. It doesn't matter how boring that 9 to 5 is, or how much people are going to convince you that working 9 to 5 is a complete waste of time. An employer is going to be much more impressed that you spent a year working in a boring job in an office than you spent a year working in a cafe. If you're 25 and they're looking at your CV and they're like, if they see on your CV that you spent the last couple of years working at a cafe while you pursued your side hustle, it just doesn't look as good. So that is a good thing for me, is that like I know that I'm keeping options open, and I have agency, like I have this job. Worst comes to worst, I'm not saying I'm going to stay at the job forever, but in theory, there is progression here, and I could make a comfortable living doing what I'm doing if things change. So again, like, I don't think you should worry too much about backup plans, because there always is a backup plan. You're always going to find some way of working things out. And I certainly don't think you should not pursue your dreams because you are worried that it might fail, But if the option's there to have a good backup plan, and you've got nothing to lose in a sense, you might as well have a job that gives you some kind of stability and some kind of backup plan. So that's the second thing. The third thing I think is you actually learn more important skills in a 9 to 5. So this is something that's quite underrated. Like, in a sense, any job that you're doing while you're working on a side hustle is not is generally speaking, it's not really gonna align very closely with your side hustle. But I think it's worthwhile in life doing something that allows you to grow the most. And I think if you have an office job of some description, you learn more in that environment than you would in a cafe. In a cafe, or I'm using cafe and pub interchangeably, like, you know what I mean, but I think in a cafe or pub, you don't like you learn how to serve tea and coffee, and how to talk to people and how to work a cash machine. That's about it. But in an office job, even though the work's boring, you do learn more skills that are actually quite marketable. And the best case scenario, even if these skills aren't life-changing, often you'll find that you learn stuff that you can apply to other aspects of your life, including your side hustle. So I'll give you an example of this. There's a very stringent way to organise files at my job, where there's a certain way, everything's got to be named a certain way. There's a whole system to it, right? And I've learned this system so that I can operate the job effectively. But I've found that I've started doing the same thing with my own videos, in a second channel where I do travel vlogs. I've started labelling stuff in a much more orderly way, with separate folders and naming everything correctly. And that I've learned that from the job that I've had, because there's a system there of how I do stuff. I've just applied it to my side hustle. And it's not a game changer. I would still be making progress if I didn't have that if I didn't have that organisation stuff. But it's a really great thing to have, and it allows me to move slightly quicker. And yeah, it's not a crazy thing, but there are lots of small things like that where it's worth knowing. You never know when this stuff's going to come in handy that you're learning at your 9 to 5. I work in tax. I do people's tax returns, and in a sense, although it feels quite removed, quite pointless, quite boring, not very relevant to what I'm really interested in, but in another sense, it's really crucial stuff. I'm dealing with people's financial setups. I know every single pound that they've earned in the tax year that I'm dealing with. That's really insightful, and it's really exciting to learn all this stuff, and it's quite applicable, and money rules the world, and it's worth knowing about that stuff. And so I might as well, if I'm gonna have some kind of job that's pointless, I might as well make it as unpointless as possible. I might as well get something from it. And I just think it's easier to get something genuinely useful, genuinely applicable from a 9 to 5 than it is from a cafe job. And then the final thing is that basically you keep better company in the 9 to 5. A lot of people talk about the 9 to 5 like it's everyone who works there is a complete loser. And I do get where they're coming from. I do think generally the people I find most exciting, most interesting, are people who are sort of outside that environment, who want to pursue something outside the 9 to 5 long term. There's no question that to want to do that, you have to be a bit more interesting, a bit more exciting. But I think you meet a lot of really great people in the 9 to 5, and you meet better people than you do in some of these hospitality jobs. I remember working hospitality jobs, and it's just a sorry place because you just have a bunch of people doing stuff that they really don't want to do. At least with the 9 to 5, it's somewhat socially acceptable to have a 9 to 5. People might resent it, people might wish they were doing something else, but it's somewhat socially acceptable, and it's somewhat meaningful to work 9 to 5. But it really isn't to work in a coffee shop unless you're running that coffee shop, or you are 16, 17 years old and it's your first job, or it's like a family business or something like that. Beyond that, it's really not that much fun. It's really not that meaningful to work in a cafe. and the kind of people you hang around with, the kind of people that attracts, that end up in these kind of jobs, are like not the kind of people that you want to be hanging around with if you want to be inspired and uplifted in life. And I just think that's worth thinking about. And like I say, I get it. Not everyone you meet in your 9-to-5 job is going to be Andrew Tate, or is going to be Hamza or whatever. But they're better people than you meet in most hospitality jobs. And that's worth thinking about. Like if you're going to be spending most of your time in a 9-to-5 in a job to support yourself, you might as well hang out with the best kind of people you can. And I think your best bet for that is some kind of office job. So yeah, that's basically all I've got to say, guys. Those are my reasons why I think you're better off actually working 9-to-5 than working in a cafe if you're pursuing some kind of side hustle. But you let me know in the comments what you think. Is this all cope? Should I just quit my job and work in a cafe? But I don't think so. But thanks for watching, guys. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, I do hope you take something away from this. I do think, especially today, lots of people are just encouraged to do anything but get a 9-to-5 job. And I get it. Like I say, I do get it, because I do think, if you have other aspirations, you should live up to that. But I think there's a danger that a lot of young guys who have never worked a job before are going to get on the wrong path of this and just end up, just stuck in some shitty job in a coffee shop, when they would have been much better off just working in a 9-to-5 job. So yeah, that's what I think. Next time you go into a Pret, guys, or a Costa or something like that, especially like a sort of chain of coffee shops, just look at the people working there and look how grumpy they look how unhappy they look to be there, and then compare that to walk through London, walk through Canary Wharf, or Liverpool Street or something like that, and just see the difference. I get it. People working in Canary Wharf, they're stressed. They've got a lot to do. They're probably still not, really pursuing what they really want to do. But they're a lot happier than the guys working in Pret. A lot happier, and they still had the free time basically to pursue a side hustle if they're really serious about it. So yeah, that's my video, guys. Thanks for watching as always, and if you are interested in coaching, I'm looking to take on some new clients. So book a call with me below. Talk to me about your goals, your aspirations, where you want to go in life. I can give you some clarity, give you some focus, offer you some advice. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. See you soon.